go ahead. But before that, I would like to welcome you on behalf of FPRC and Foreign Policy School. As I have mentioned in the letter also, this is a stepping stone to a master's course devoted exclusively to studies on Indian foreign policy, 2-year, 4-semester course. We are written to UGC that please introduce this new master's course for students in India so that they not may fly to US or UK or another. Because the Indian students say that there are very few, good and useful master's course in Indian university. So why not focus on our own country's foreign policy? So this is the objective, and these courses are in preparation of that. And so far, we have recorded about 71 video interviews on different aspects of India's foreign policy, diplomacy, and relations. So with that, I will now request you to please go ahead with your address. Thank you very much.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. Well, as you can see, the title that I have put it up on the presentation is Counterterrorism or Counterinsurgency, how the ISAF fought the war on terror in Afghanistan. Now, when we talk about counterinsurgency mechanisms in Afghanistan, we always talk about what the NATO did, what the West did, what the US did, what British did, what the French did, or the Canadians did. But then it's not commonly analyzed, or it's not commonly taught as a principle how institution building is equally responsible when we talk about counter-terror or counterinsurgency. So when we say counterterrorism initiatives or counterinsurgency initiatives, it's not just these initiatives that are taken over by independent nations. They are also an institution that is behind this. So when I take you back into the history, we take the example of MACV-SOG, that is the Military Assistance Command South Vietnam Special Operations Group, or the Studies and Observation Group, which was primarily responsible to analyze North Vietnamese local militia, the partition warfare, the Viet Minh in the earlier stages, Viet Cong in the later stages. So how institution plays a larger role is something that I would like to cover. Moving on, let us talk about what ISAF was. So what was the ISAF's mandate? The ISAF was launched by NATO in 2003 with a UN mandate of NATO-led international military force operating under the Security Council Resolution 1386, which came into play at the Bonn Agreement. It was primarily tasked to train ANSF and assist rebuilding Afghan government while building up institutions that will combat against insurgent groups, not limited to Taliban, but also covering Al-Qaeda. ISF was tasked to secure Kabul in the initial 2001-2003 phase, and surrounding areas from Taliban, Al-Qaeda, factional warlords, and establish an Afghan transitional authority under Hamid Karzai. So by 2001, and then we move on to 2003, the mandate is clear. ISF gets the go-ahead to operate in the entire Afghanistan region. ISF then partners with the ATA, that is the Afghan Transitional Authority, and UNAMA, that is the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan. Then on August 11, 2003, NATO assumed the command leadership of ISF. So it's now NATO ISF. And from 2006 to 2011, the ISF participated in an intense combat operations in eastern and southern Afghanistan. So this is covering the mandate. Let us now take a look at the ISF upper command structure. So you've got the commander of ISAF, who's an American. So take a look at the American flag, just adjacent to the NATO flag. You've got the SOE, which is the Afghan National Academy Training School, which is going to be run, which was earlier than being run by NATO as a principal. You've got Commander NATO Training Command, Training and Monitoring Command Afghanistan, NTMA, a commanding general of combined. You've got a task force, you've got a stabilization and transit command, Afghanistan, which is again owned by an American. You've got a combined IJC, which is an interoperability command, which is again run by an American. And you've got regional commands, OMLTs, which is essentially operational mentoring and liaison teams, and POMLTs, police operational mentoring and liaison teams. And then in addition to this, you've got PRTs, that is the provincial reconstruction teams, and the PRT's military component. So PRT was divided into two components. You've got a police component, you've got a military component. So now let us take a look as to in this structure, where does ISF come into play? You've got NATO coming on the top. You've got Joint Force Command Brunsum just below. You've got CENTCOM, Central Command, which is American, giving the equal power to JFC Brunsum. You've got ISAF in between, which is partnered by the US led institution. So you've got a 4-star who's in support of ISF as a commander. You've got a 4-star sitting on top at the JFC Brunsum, and a 4-star of the NATO command sitting on the top. CENTCOM comes just adjacent to it, and then you've got a layer of 2 stars and 3 stars. So when I say 3 stars, I refer to lieutenant generals. When I say 2 stars, I refer to major generals. So, and when there is 1 star, there's a brigadier. So, but it's not necessarily that a 1-star or the 2-star got to be a brigadier in this sense. It could have been a senior commander or a commander with equivalent of that rank. So if you see the entire architecture, you'll see a predominant role of the Americans in this ecosystem. CENTCOM is America, Task Force S-35, CJSOTF, Combined Joint Special Operation Task Force Afghanistan, if you see a little lower, 101st Airborne Division, again of the US Army. You've got a large structure of US OPCON, if you see in the legend. So US OPCON is operational conduct. So if you see the red stripes, that's the entire operational area that was taken over by the Americans. Then you've got TACON, that is the tactical command. So any tactical operations that has been conducted primarily by the US is highlighted in the blue. So you can see the legend US 4A, US Force Command, in transition with another subsidiary command, which is a part of CJS SOTF, that is the Combined Joint Special Operation Task Force Afghanistan. Then you've got NATO OPCON, again, NATO Operational Conduct. So all the NATO operational conduct is marked in the black in the legend. You can see NATO monitoring mission in Afghanistan. You've got ISF, you've got Regional Command South. If you see all blue, these are all NATO, with Canada, with Germany. Zabul, you've got a Romanian presence. Then you've got Regional Command North. We've got German's presence, Regional Command Center. RC is Regional Command Center. You've got Turkish presence. So in this picture, you see a predominant domination of the Americans. Now let us take a look of ISF commanders. Operation Enduring Freedom started from 7th October 2001 to 31st December 2014. The first commander was a British Army commander, Major General John McCall. Then the Turkish commander came in, who stayed in for 235 days. We've got a German Army commander coming in, Lieutenant General Norbert van East, 182 days. Again, a German commander following, 182 days. You've got a Canadian, 182 days. You've got a French, Lieutenant General Jean Lepay, 188 days. Then during that time, you've got another Turkish commander for 173 days. So during this time, their engagement with the Taliban was a little minimal, but then it was explosive. The moment the commanding general from Muro del Vecchi, who's the Italian army commander, came into play, and he stayed in command for 272 days only. There was again a sort of a pressure as to who's going to take over the ISF as a command. Then you've got Sir David Richards coming in, who took over the preliminary command of Operation Enduring Freedom and the ISF in total. 276 days he was in. But then there was an explosion of Taliban raging back into hinterland, perhaps recruiting. There was a lot of fierce confrontation, which resulted in some sort of, I would say, some American influence at Pentagon, perhaps it could have been, charted through the Senate, that the American domination has to be there. You see General McNeil coming in for 1 year and 120 days. General McKiernan, 1 year, 12 days. General Stanley McChrystal, 1 year, 8 days. Then when General McChrystal was sacked, he resigned. General Nick Carter comes in, and he's a commander for 11 days after General David Petraeus came into play. Again, he was here for 1 year and 14 days. So now the explosion of insurgency in the region is massive. There is massive confrontation between the NATO and the Taliban fighters, which results in General John Allen taking over for 1 year, 207 days, with General Dunford coming in for 1 year, 197 days. So this gives you a picture of what Operation Enduring Freedom was about from 7th October to 31st December 2014, 21 to 2014 in total. Let us take a look of what Operation Enduring Freedom was all about. So the idea of Operation Enduring Freedom was that Osama bin Laden was behind 11 September. It simply made 5-point ultimatum to Taliban. Deliver US all the leaders of Al-Qaeda, release foreign nationals imprisoned by them, immediately close all terror training camps operating in that vicinity within Afghanistan, the entire vicinity of Afghanistan, and hand over every terrorist and their supporters to appropriate authorities. Give the United States full access to terror training missions and terror training camps for inspection. So a very bold, a very, very bold initiative taken by the Americans. But then what happened? So let us look at the result. US-led coalition removed Taliban from power, crippled Al-Qaeda. On 9th October, Afghanistan has a new president, Hamid Karzai, first direct elections. In 2005, you've got Afghan parliamentary elections coming in. So let us take a look of how expansion of ISAF came into play. So the stage one started from the north. Now, General Eikenberry is a dear friend of mine, and I asked General Eikenberry once, why do you have an expansion from the stage one that is in the north, rather when you've got Pakistan on the border with Durand as a point of confrontation? Because every time there was a militancy rise, the Taliban had a large amount of recruiters and fighters coming in, crossing the Pakistan border to Afghanistan. So it's logical that you start from east, then go north. But then somehow I was not satisfied with the answer that he gave, but that is what he did. So from stage one, he started from North Afghanistan. He went to West Afghanistan. So 971 kilometers of Western and some part of Southern Afghanistan is shared by Iran. So he went to the Western front in 2005, takes control of the Southern front in 2006, and then establishes some stability in the Eastern front by 5th October 2006. With the dark bluish that you see is Kabul. Now, let us take a look of regional commands. You've got Regional Command East, the color you've seen on the screen in front of you. Regional Command South is controlled. Regional Command Southwest. Regional Command West. So you see the green. Regional Command North. You've got the entire northern province coming in: Badakhshan, Takhar, Baghlan, Samangan, Balkh. You've got Saraipol, Faryab, and then you've got regional capital, RC capital, that is Regional Command in capital, that is Kabul. So Kabul at the helm with Nangar, Paktia, Logar, Vardak, Parwan, Panjshir, Kapisa, sandwiching Kabul in such a way that Kabul became the center of hotbed for since the time the regional command was set up. So the happiness that you saw in the minds and the hearts of Taliban when they came in and walked into the front door of Kabul and took over, and then they were happy we've taken Kabul, is one of the reasons why the significance of Kabul was more, because it was sandwiched by the entire command operating in the Southern Command in the neighbor. You've got the Regional Command East taken over. So this is geographically one of the reasons why they were happy. Now let us see what nations took over where. Kabul was given to Turkey for some time. The green part, regional command, was a regional command east, had US as a lead nation. And where did they deploy? Nuristan, Panjshir, Kunar. So where did they deploy in Kunar? They were there in Asadabad, Kapisa, Metarlam in Lagman, Jalalabad in Nandahar, Kolelam in Logar. So they didn't leave one segment of a command that the Americans didn't deploy in East. You've got the Great Britain taking over the lead nation, RC Command South. You've got again US coming in and taking over Southwest. So Helmand, Nimroz, part of Kandahar, Farah. Farah is again facing the Iranian with the Italian support, but this was with the Spanish. Ghor was Romanian. You've got Swedish coming in over for bulk, Germany, Kunduz, Takhar, Badakhshan, and then some presence of, I would say, Italy in Baglan, that is Pole Khumri. Now, let us take during this time. So I'm talking about now from 2003, I've escalated to 2009. By 2009, the East region has troop numbers of 18,300, command nation US, with a total presence of force 71,000. Kabul has 6,130 in Kabul only that were French. North distributed 5,700 with Germany taking over. The West predominantly Herat, some in Farah, and in the South 36,500 in South, with Netherlands as the command nation. So in addition to this, in addition to the total force of 71,000, you've got 36,000 additional troops who were part of Operation Enduring Freedom. That makes it 1.5 million. So let us take a look of ISAF commanders after Operation Enduring Freedom. Now, Operation Enduring Freedom is over. 2015, done. Operation Resolute support mission came into play. 1st January 2015 to 2021. Operation Freedom Sentinel 2015 to 2021, which is a sub-part, as I would say, a sub-mission of the entire Resolute support. Operation Freedom Sentinel, and then Operation Allies Refuge, that is the ability to take off the scenes that you saw with refugees and those who probably can apply for citizenship and visa and run away to neighboring nations and to principal nations operating in that vicinity still, US, Italy, France, and then Germany, Britain. So by that time, General John Campbell was in command for 1 year and 65 days. Insurgency is at its peak now. General John Nicholson is here for 2 years, 184 days. General Austin Miller, the famous General Miller, the last commander, ISF, 2 years, 313 days. Then you've got General Mackenzie, who took over for 50 days before finally the Americans were out. Now, what was this Freedom Sentinel about? Now, the NATO-led Resolute support mission started on 1st of January 2015. The entire objective of this was, let us do counterterrorism operations against Al-Qaeda. Let us work with allies as part of Resolute support mission and train. So in nowhere in Enduring Freedom was train, assist, and advise. Now they are a part of a mission whose objective is to train, assist, and advise ANDSF. Restructuring and strengthening ANDSF so that they can secure Afghan people. Now, it was nowhere to be mentioned in Enduring Freedom that they'll do all of this. So after 2015, they decide, okay, let's train the Afghan army. Let's train the Afghan National Army in a way to defend and bring peace and stability in the region. Let us support, plan, program, and ensure budget. Let us ensure transparency, accountability, and oversight in terms of governance, adherence to the principles of rule of law, and ensure that there is good governance. Support the establishment and sustainment of such processes in a way that there is recruiting, training, managing, development, all of these initiatives that is taken by a regular force, a regular command, a regular legitimate military institution. Now, train, advise, and assistance command. where did the NATO decided to step up? TAAC North was in Mazar, TAAC West was in Herat, TAAC South was in Kandahar, TAAC Central, again, very carefully, Turkey. So Turkey takes the RSM headquarters, and then TAAC Lagman contains the larger portion of the east. Now, nowhere did I ever mention insurgency. Now, this is where it all starts. The screenshot of what you see in front of you is ISF commander's counterinsurgency guidance. So you were doing counterterrorism operations against Al-Qaeda. Now, somehow, because you've started building, rebuilding, structuring the military, providing good governance, there is an idea in somebody's mind in the context of ensuring that there is a counterinsurgency manual present among the commanders. This is the ISAF commanders' counterinsurgency guidance that provides them what should ISAF do as a part of their counterinsurgency mandate, which is nowhere in their official document. So what does the ISAF mandate talk about? NATO-led ISAF was to provide security operations to protect Afghan people, neutralize insurgents, deny sanctuary to extremists, train, advise, assist ANISAF or ANDSF in total. ISAF's primary objective in Afghanistan was to ensure that Afghan authorities provide effective security, they follow the rule of law, and then their country can never be used again as a safe haven for terrorists. So as per the ISAF mandate, it was tasked to strengthen civil military stabilization and fulfill counterinsurgency tasks. So now, what was Al-Qaeda counter-terror operations against Al-Qaeda? There was nowhere to be found. Now they've got a new mandate, which says this is what you want, this is what you're going to do, which is essentially a counterinsurgency part of a segment, which does not involve counter-terrorist segments at all. You will not do all of these and ensure that there is a structured army, a structured military, ensuring governance, rule of law in counterterrorism. You know, it's surprising because when you're talking about counterterrorism, you're talking about eliminating Al-Qaeda, you're talking about eliminating Lashkar-e-Taiba, you talk about eliminating, the segments of Tehrik-e-Taliban operating in Afghanistan. You talk about Haqqani network being disrupting their network, but you don't talk about building, you don't talk about rebuilding, you don't talk about developing strategies to ensure there is rule of law. Counterterrorism does not inculcate all of that. Counterinsurgency does, but somehow somebody in that infrastructure, in the decision-making cycle, decides to put insurgency as a segment and brings on top of the table of decision makers, which results in a new counterinsurgency module. Surprising, actually surprising to me, because when I say what was ISF doing before Resolute mission, was it doing counterinsurgency or counterterrorism? I mean, I'm still in a dilemma. So as per the field manual 3.324, the tactics in counterinsurgency talks about an armed struggle for the support of the population. So were they doing an armed struggle against Taliban? Were they doing an armed struggle against Al-Qaeda? Because that's what it is. So in accordance to the mandate, the ISF was tasked to ensure peace and stability in the region. Okay, but if you do a counterinsurgency operations, it cannot coincide with peacekeeping missions and stability operations. You can't have both of them. So what was the ISF doing? Did the ISF coin the coin way? Or did the mandate empower ISF to isolate and annihilate terrorists such as Al-Qaeda or other factions operating in the region and conduct counterinsurgency operations and win hearts and minds, all of that at the same time? Well, to segregate the idea of what exactly happens in a counterterrorism operation, let us understand what the NATO ISF did. So I'm not talking about Americans anymore. I'm talking about now there's a confusion in as I show the structure of the NATO and the Americans simultaneously plugged in some way where the decision-making architecture was similar. So the counter-terrorism operations, which was essentially a limited action. Now, for Resolute mission support, it is a limited action. The UAV has a range less than 500 miles. So if you want to fly a UAV in the context of counter-terror operations, the areas used in the 1990s as terror camps for Al-Qaeda requires bases either in Afghanistan or in Pakistan. So if you want to fly into Pakistan, you've got to have a base in Afghanistan. So special forces could have been launched from a certain distance, because if there is a high value target, so how will you neutralize it? Put up a drone strike. But in the meantime, let's say you don't want to do a drone strike. Let's say it's too lethal, it's too complex. What do? You've got soft teams, special forces teams deployed, launched from a certain distance. But then what if those soft teams are hit? An RPG hits up an MH-60 Black Hawk, and then there's a rescue that needs to be done. So there has to be a combat search and rescue at base. But then for that needs to be planning. And if you want to do that, the estimated time of flight could have only been at light, because if you are dropping in soft teams in Chinooks CH-47s does not have combat capability. It has a heavy MMG with 2 door gunners with MMGs, but then that's it. They can't fire. They don't have rockets. So to protect them from incoming fire down from the valley, you need longbow. That is the AH-64's Apaches. So they've got offensive capability. The only possible solution could be to use precision guided munitions. But then if you use precision guided munition, the evidence of whatever you could find probably in that rubble will be lost and gone, because either the ISI is going to go, have people in identifying and collecting remnants of whatever they can possibly from the high value target, or the SF personnel would be coming in for bagging and tagging, which is critical in counter-terror operations. So counter-terror operations also require a strong soft presence. But with the reputation of ISF and US seemingly, painting civilians as collateral, because every time they went in, there was some casualty in civilian losses, and violations of Pakistan's sovereignty at some point of time would eventually enraged or would have influenced Pashtuns across the border to further infuriate their expressions through violence. That means that if they decide to do an airstrike against them and it does not go as per the rule of law and there are civilian casualties, more Pashtuns will be joining Taliban, which is again at a risk. So ISF traded very carefully when it comes to counter-terror operations, and this was known as limited actions. So when you do a counter operation, there is a lot of information involved. In the context of operations, information is intelligence. So for ISAF to identify targets, signal intelligence would have come handy. So how do you identify targets? Signal intelligence would have relayed to you, and the CIA with its bases in Asadabad or in Jalalabad would have probably identified high-value targets. So in the case of Osama bin Laden, it was known that Al-Qaeda and Taliban factions are wary of signal. That is the reason why half of the time, half of his life, he hid in Tora Bora mountains before he crossed over to Pakistan. Now, intelligence agencies need assessment reports. They need reliability. How are they going to be gaining that reliability? They'll be reaching out to the ISI and through ISF allies who were able to identify HVT's nom de guerre. So the moment the ISI would relay the nom de guerre, they would essentially make their actual locations difficult, because now you've got ISI involved in it who will definitely compromise the entire process, and there is a large chance that the high value targets will be absolutely out of the radar in moments, or perhaps in moment notice. So more valuable the HVT, more it took time for SOF to prepare, because it's natural. You've got to collect data. So when the SOF went in to target Osama bin Laden, then they did not drop a bomb on him. They went in physically. They had thousands and thousands of bytes of data they had computers, they had hard disks, they had CDs, they had valuable information on Al-Qaeda future operations that they took over for analysis and assessment, which took hours actually. So, and then if you're still out of the opinion that special forces are not good, even if a predator flies over that top, it has less than 500 miles as a radius. And again, predator is running on fuel. It's not running on anything else. So what if it runs out of fuel? It needs to land. You don't have a landing space. So predator, not a show. If the SF is near the target, so if the SF is deployed near the target, strike package could be delivered in hours. If the strike asset is reliably identified and the location is unknown, possibly over the horizon, it would take more than 16 hours to prep the UAV. So, which means that if you've got a high value target in Baghlan and your UAV is in near Nuristan, it cannot fly all the way to Baghlan. It has to have a near vicinity. So you need to get a predator. If there's no predator available, send SOF. That's the basic challenge. But the scenario is quantifiable when the HVT is on the run. So what if the high value targets get to know that, yes, the Americans are after me and it's difficult for me to stay in one place. What if he jumps? Then again, you need to get the reliable data as to where next, where can he go? Where is his leading points? But in Afghanistan, actionable intelligence was as good as 4 hours. So if I need to collect an actionable intelligence from a reliable partner, it took me 4 hours to analyze it. And it was read, reread, and analyzed by an analyst. So it took 4 hours as a minimum. It could have taken 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, possibly days. Again, if it is reliable and ratified by multiple analysts. But if it is in Arabic or Pashto, the intel would simply stale and it would become rotten in weeks because you don't have a Pashto guy, you don't have an Arabic guy. Who will translate Arabic to Pashto? Or from Pashto to Arabic to Pashto and English. So this is about Arabic and Pashto. In Kunari or Vegali, which is spoken only by 150 odd people in Kunar and almost 100 people in Vegal, there were no interpreters. So what if the Taliban change the radio sets and one day decide to speak in Vegali? There is no translation of what they are speaking because nobody in NATO ISAF speaks Vegali. So now the idea is, what if the high value target is hiding in Pakistan? So Washington was primarily relying their airbase at Quetta, and they were using Quetta to hunt HVTs. A whistleblower someday realizes that there's a UAV base in local media, perhaps the ISI tipped him or whatever. He releases the photo of the airstrip at Jalalabad, and the Pakistanis banned future operations from their base. Now you've got no airbase in Quetta. So now again, Washington could not rely on UAVs. So then, since it couldn't rely, it was not able to expand UAV as a strategy for counterterrorism initiatives, because political volatility in Pakistani politics is something that we all know of. So the ISI may have expressed discomfort and resented on sharing valuable intel, with its counterpart. So now ISI is no longer a reliable player because perhaps them or all the points lead to them as releasing the photo of an airbase based in Quetta. So operation conduct is now coined. So we have established counterterrorism operations cannot happen. Okay, let's do operational conduct as counterinsurgency. So for a more continuation CT ops, there was deployment of troops, which is must. And this was a legal framework which they signed with the Afghan government. Now, the Americans were dictated as the part of the counter-terror orientation, and they could legally force ISF to renegotiate the treaty of forces and put temporary stop to their counterinsurgency operations in the region. Limit coalition engagement with US in particular, which means counterinsurgency operations in the region will have limited coalition engagement. So we will do COIN, we will do limitedly. So you do counter-terror operations, you do limited. You do COIN, you do limited. And as per policy advisors, it was recommended that a new treaty of forces will be signed after post-withdrawal. So once everything would have done, everything would have been, jolly and good. We will sign another treaty which will only specify counterterrorism operations. Okay, so now, unsure as to what the Afghans demand in return for an agreement. So now they were panicked. They were panic attacks in Washington, because they're saying, so now they want us to sign another treaty after we are gone. As in, like, what do the Afghans demand in return? I mean, what is it? What is it that they want? So what restrictions would they impose? Will there be negotiations? So now the Americans have to renegotiate a treaty of keeping forces, limiting counter-terror, limiting counterinsurgency. And in the meantime, what will be the US stance be? So how will US should respond? Again, a simple, I would say, a misconduct on their part. So if ISF continued its support to COIN operations, that is through US, and relegated its policy of CT to limited operations. So now the policy was that counterinsurgency will be conducted through US forces, and counterterrorism will be only limited. So that means as long as the UAV is flying in the air, has an airstrip, can refuel, can stay in the air for so long, we'll do counter-terror operations. So now we have decided we will do counterinsurgency operations. Counterinsurgency operations as a mandate has a specific rules of engagement. Commanders have clear objective. They communicate clearly with lower echelons, which is tactical commanders. That is, you've got a major, lieutenant colonel, a section commander, company commander, brigade, battalion commander, right to the brigade commander. Everyone talks to everyone very clearly. I want to shoot this man, they'll say shoot him. It's not like, let me decide, let me see if I can see him, let me ratify who he is, let me see which village he comes from. That does not happen in counterinsurgency operations. Unification of services. So all actors in counterinsurgency knows what they do. Is A is going to fly an aircraft, A will fly an aircraft. It does not matter if it flies a rotary or a fixed wing. It will fly an aircraft. It is his mandate as to what aircraft is he comfortable in, or what aircraft is going to be needed in an operation. So everything, all actors will unify their forces and play roles designated to their area of expertise. Now, intelligence, all operations based on intelligence are bottom to top, and information collection from tactical commanders, section commanders who are on the ground, who are manning checkposts, who are interacting with local leaders, who are interacting with local groups on a daily basis, will relay everything that they have to the higher echelons, including their apprehensions on high value targets. So if I am a section commander, and then I see things where I find that there is a person A who's a high value actually, but then it's not relayed in any of the chatter that comes in the radio. Nobody hears about him, nobody knows about him, but then I think it's a big fish. It's again something that it's a hunch. I'm not too sure. So I'll bump it up to the chain of command and say, let's look at this guy. Let's look at him in a very different way. Let's see what is he hiding. Now, with that, political leadership are briefed on every decision. Rule of law, rule of law is applicable, predefined ROEs. Insurgents are clear. Everything is mandated. And then you've got insurgents who've essentially segregated into motivated planners, executors, sleeper cells. Everybody knows who they are. So either they are motivated, somebody is a planner, somebody is an executioner, somebody is a sleeper cell. But in this context, US came in the concept of having a counterinsurgency operations built on clear, hold, and build. Clear and secure the environment, hold, retain control over territories, build and win popular support. So what does clear, hold, build means actually? Clear, laying the ground. Before initiating counterinsurgency operations, we will first understand what to clear, how much to hold, and what is to be built. So when the leaders in the ecosystem knew what to do, what is to clear, what are the coalition partners, what do they think, how do we identify key leaders, how do we ensure a key structure, what is the societal architecture, what are the tribal dynamics. Everybody knows everything and everybody is very clear about it. Laying the groundwork essentially. So we are starting from scratch. We'll build up the society from the bottom. So military operations will commence with only one objective. We will secure, eliminate any influence of hostility in that region, eliminate and expel insurgents, anti-government entities operating in that region. Very crystal clear in their operation. Hold, we will maintain security. So in this phase, we will maintain security in the region, employ initiatives which connects with the local masses directly. They understand us, we understand them. There is a clarity in thought, there is clarity in communication. Coalition partners with an objective to strengthen relationship with regional allies. We will ensure regional allies are with us. Coalition partners work with us through open dialogues with rural leaders, tribal heads. We'll supply humanitarian support and everybody is happy. Build. Now is the point where we build trust, confidence, and security. We will, we have now in this section, we have attained clear and hold. Now we will build, because now we know that they trust us. We will build, institutions. We will build governance structures. We will build local scenarios. We will build and provide training to ecosystems. We will provide training to local leaders, tribal factions, future policy makers. All governance, that all principles of governance, if I may say so, that are required in this ecosystem, they are structured, well structured, right from the bottom to the top in the build in the build context. So education opportunities, local bakery shops, construction of institutions, government offices, all of them are part of winning hearts and minds strategy. So, but it never happened. It never fructified. Clear, build, and hold was never a sort of a thing that was happening. ISF, again, I'm reiterating this for you all who joining me here, was a United Nations authorized force in 2001 to assist the ATA, Afghan Interim Authority, and surrounding areas, ensure and maintain security, and personnel of the United Nations operating in that ecosystem. Resolute Support Mission was a new initiative that would train, advise, and assist. So it's not written there in the ISF's mandate as mandated by the UN. It's a mission which NATO took on its own cognizance, whose idea was that we will, ensure planning, programming, transparency, accountability, oversight, governance, force generation, recruiting, training, management, and development of all Afghan masses as a whole. But Resolute Support Mission came into a time when Taliban was enjoying its strengths in this intelligence, because in the meantime, while the NATO was busy doing all of this, Americans, the US, the US command in Afghanistan through the CENTCOM was doing counter-terror operations outside the NATO mandate. So they've got their own thing going on, and the NATO wants to build all of this. This backfires because now the Americans are doing counter-terror operations, and then they're killing more civilians. They're killing more people, and more those who lost are now want revenge. That's the Afghan culture. They want revenge. If a Pashtun steals a bunch of sheep from another tribe, there are wars being fought on a bunch of sheep. There are wars being fought on camels. So if Alukzai, which is second largest tribe in Pashtuns, they take sheep or goats from Popalzai and they steal them or they kill them. There's going to be a huge war between the two tribes. So this is their culture, but then they didn't understand that. So unclear rule of what now you've essentially done all of that. You've done clear, build, hold. What will regional allies do? Who are your regional allies? So ISF had to prove legitimacy through mandate by sanctioning some authority to somebody. At least there could have been somebody. So it proved ineffective because they wanted to provide anti-Taliban factions and tribal actor security, which were never there, because now the Taliban was entering into hinterlands. Poor governance. They never ensured on the basic stuff. There's no water. There's no running electricity. Hospitals are going crazy with large amount of deaths and casualties. You've got tribal rivalry. So a Pashtun, a Popalzai or a Nurzai will not talk to an Akulzai or Akalzai or Galzai, because these are these are dynamics of tribal rivalry which existed beyond centuries. So it was important for the NATO to first understand them before building infrastructure, supporting societal architectures. Justice system. Justice in Afghanistan was, if you take my sheep, I will kill your family. That is a justice that the Taliban, or that was not only limited to Taliban, but also that was a system that worked in Afghanistan among the tribes for generations. It's not new. People have written about it. But again, the Americans or the NATO were not very familiar with that context. So they wanted some justice, and then we're going to have open courts. So the local mullah or the local Popalzai tribal leader had never seen a court in his life. So you're going to build up a court who's to somebody who doesn't know what courts are, and then you're going to present him in front of a judge who he sees first as a woman, because in his idea, in his thought, in his generational lacking, the only place a woman has is in his house. She can't move outside that house. That is how he grew up seeing all of that. So I mean, it was crazy in the part of decision makers. Now you've got Afghan National Police, you've got Afghan local police, and you've got the Afghan National Army. Afghan National Army never spoke to Afghan National Police. Afghan National Police were largely tribal leaders, heads who were becoming richer by taking money from the Americans, skimming the Americans essentially, and showing fake recruitment numbers. A poorly trained Afghan face was given to an AK was given to that person. An AK-47 in the hands of a poorly trained Afghan is the future. Hurriedly, transition of security responsibility to Afghan forces backfired. So counterinsurgency has no timeline. Vietnam is an example. Malay insurgency is an example. Algeria is an example. Counterinsurgency has no timeline. A republic does. A republic can be a republic with a limited timeline. Greece, you've got Rome, you've got Cuba, you've got some may say Vietnam at some point. So and then let's not limit ourselves to South Asia. Go to Africa, Uganda, Ghana. So republic has a timeline until unless somebody. Pakistan is an example in front of us. So every republic has a timeline. So who are your regional allies? They are your regional allies. They are all warlords. Bamiyan had a warlord. Poglan had a warlord. Panjshir had a warlord. Kapisa has a warlord. Jalalabad has warlords. And all those warlords were involved in what? Drug trafficking, gun running, women smuggling. They were bachabazi, as in smuggling of boys, young boys. They were essentially the regional allies of the Americans. Cultural unawareness. I don't want to get into this. I've already spoken on it. So let us take a look at simplified ethnic map. How many Pashtuns do you see? 42%. Where are they? Eastern and southern. Tajiks, north, some part of west. Hazaras, predominantly in the center. Uzbeks, complete on the north, some sections. Baluch, 2%, Turkmen 3%, Nuristani, Pashai, again, less than 0.05%. This is what Afghanistan is, and in the terms of ethnicity. Let us talk about linguistics now. Dari, so if you compare this, keeping in mind with this, Dari, you've got Hazargai spoken by Hazaras. You've got Pashto, you've got Baluchi, Braul, Dari, Magoli. So you've got Vegali, you've got Nuristani. Nobody talks about, you've got Pashai. Pashai are tribes, again. So Kati, Munji, nobody talks about. Gawarbati, nobody talks about. Trigami, only 100 people speak Trigami. So these are all language. Vakhi, Kyrgyz, Shuguni, Tangshawi, nobody talks about all of that because less than 50 people I've actually met one who knew Tangshawi. And when I asked him how many are there, he said, I know only 50 who speak Tangshawi in the entire Afghanistan. So imagine out of 54 join Taliban, they're going to speak to each other in Tangshawi. I'm not going to know if they're going to if they are on a radio or on an open channel talking about killing me. Ineffective strategic objectives. So tactical commanders didn't know anything what was being planned. Lower echelons or lower commanders never got to know what tactical commanders were planning. This was the disconnect militarily as to what the commanders are talking about, what the lower commanders are talking about. They didn't know a thing. So top commanders made decisions on a gloomy picture, which was presented to them by certain documents which says you're doing fantastic. But they did not speak to the lower echelons who were getting killed on the battle, on the roads. So again, when it's important because by 1840s, the Brits has a history of negative influence in Afghanistan since the 1840s because of the great power competition against the Russians. So they didn't even read their own history because this is what it seems. And with Pashtuns as the 42% ethnic in Afghanistan, with they were alienated from the central government because they thought it's unfair. Most of them are being Tajiks and Uzbeks in nature. What are the Pashtuns going to do? So Pashtuns did what? They joined the Taliban. Maximum 99%, almost 95% to 99% are Pashtuns. So that is one of the problems. So ISAF did not cater any positive mechanism to influence. We are winning. We want to do this with you. We want to do that with you. Nobody, they never mentioned corruption. Again, intelligence was a basic problem. I've written a paper on intelligence. I will share with you on how it was very difficult for intelligence to reach up to the higher echelons. By the time it would reach to the higher echelons, it would have already been 40 to 50 days. Civilians were collateral. They were killed. They were threatened. They were killed. There were massive civilian collaterals in Panjwai, in Nuristan, in Pech Valley in Nuristan, in Korengal Valley. It was disastrous. But then again, once you kill somebody's family, he will avenge. How will he avenge? He's going to go join Taliban. Let us take a look at population density. This is very important. So I want you to emphasize keep this picture in mind. Now see this. So now you see that these are the places where you've got a population density at the maximum. So when you see this, which has a large population density, and then this is how Taliban came in, by taking over capitals, which has a large population density. Now, there was something known as village stability operations. Now, it's just like the Indian concept of, I would say, home guards. They invested so much in Afghan provincial police that they eventually gave Afghan provincial police in the hands of warlords, and they ran the way they want. They skimmed money from the Americans, they skimmed money from the British, they skimmed money from NATO, and they had their own rules. They had their own controls of Afghan national and provincial, police segments. They did what they want to. They were 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds joining as police, policing their neighborhoods with AKs. It was a disaster for village stability operations. Now, how do you identify who's Taliban? I mean, I ask these questions when I do these exercises of my study for my PhD, with everybody. So how do you know that is he wearing funny boots? Is he wearing funny jacket? Is he wearing something that resembles Taliban? How do you identify who's Taliban, who's not Taliban? I mean, so how do you see big nose, big ears, big mouth? How do you see that he's big legs? How do you see that he's Taliban? Now, what are the lessons learned from this engagement? ISF has unclear mandate and operation or modus operandi. They didn't know what essentially their mission was. Counterterrorism, counterinsurgency. I mean, it's no idea what they were doing. Now, who were the regional allies? Mullahs. They were doing drug trafficking. They were warlords. Their regional allies. So they didn't know the society as a structure. They didn't know what they were interacting with. They didn't know who they were interacting with. They didn't have a mission objective. What did the lower echelons talked about? Higher echelons. Higher echelons, military commanders talking to lower military commanders or lower echelons. They didn't know what they were speaking. So lower echelons were being killed. Higher echelons were wondering, okay, it's just the part of that. Whenever there is an operation which results in collateral civilian masses, the ISF never came in and criticized it. They never came in and said it is my fault. They never came in. They never admitted to their guilt. That resulted in alienation. How alienation resulted in an increase in Taliban ranks? The victims, the ones who lost their family members, they joined the Taliban. Intelligence, disaster, I've explained to you in length. Village stability operations, absolutely yes. Provincial reconstruction teams. I mean, it was a disaster. You go into hinterlands, you create hospitals. Where do you create hospitals? You don't create hospitals inside the hinterlands. You don't create hospitals near an Afghan house. You create hospitals on the base. So if you want to go to the base to get yourself treated, while Taliban is looking at you and seeing that, okay, so this fellow from this village is getting his son or himself treated, he's going to come and kill you. So none of the Afghans had the, they didn't take the risk of getting into it. To conclude, tribal ethnic diversities play a huge role. So when I'm talking about a Pashtun, I should know as an analyst that either he's a Popalzai, Alokzai, Shalzai, Galilzai. I need to know where he comes from. Herat, Kunar, Paktia, Vardak. Perhaps he grows poppy in Korengal, which is again something that the government or the decision making or the national unification essentially did not happen in Afghanistan. There is no Afghanistan hidden inside the deep, in the same way, just like for all of us. So we are all Indians. We say we are all Indians. They don't say that they are Afghans. They say we are Pashtuns, we are Uzbeks, we are Tajiks. The idea of Afghanistan is Western. It was not inherently with them forever. So again, they didn't have a coalition partner. No positive outcome came from US and UK engagement, because whenever the US went to Pakistan, the UK went to Pakistan, the result was alienation. Again, so if you're coming into my country and you say, Anant, I'm gonna, forget about country. Let's start small. You're coming into my house and you say, Anant, I'm here to stay. And I'm like, okay, so stay 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, a week, a month. When you decide to stay a year, I'm going to throw you away because I welcomed you, not because of my genuineness towards loving you. I welcomed you because it is my honor. It is the sacred code of Pashtunwali, which permits me to host you and shelter you and protect you from outside threats. But then there has to be a limit. Then organizing training in the concept of, give an AK to somebody and say, you are Afghan national. Go and fight. That doesn't happen. So as a result, a new president, a new council, with a very staunch smile, smirk, and their hands around a weapon, they're going to rule Afghanistan. How and when are they going to do it? I'm not too sure. So Afghanistan bids homage to the Alexander, 1840s, the Brits, 1980s, the Russians, and then there you go, a mullah putting the helmet over the top of a stand. 2021, 15th August. I'm open to questions and suggestions.
Thank you. I think I have yet to come across such a mind-blowing and such an extensive and exhaustive account of the organization and all these affairs of a military or an army, and particularly when they are on a mission. And I think that explains why US realized its folly, and they better decided to leave Afghanistan because they have realized their mistake. And later on, they came to know through their audit and all that, that it was said that on paper there were 3 lakh, forces in the government forces. And it was discovered that there are only hardly 70 physically present, 70,000. So
Absolutely.
that explains everything, and you have explained the background. And theoretically, it was all right. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it, but its implementation, the practical side of its implementation, was lost sight of. And I think it was exploited by the Taliban. And the role of ISI is also a little suspect, and they also added fuel to the fire. And they hastened, the US exit from Afghanistan, and the so-called dear friend of US, and it's not but expected. So now I would like to open the house for question answer session, and I will ask the participants to come up with their questions in a clear and simple manner, and first introduce yourself. Be quick.
Hello, sir.
Come on.
I'm Gayatri Dandekar. I have graduated from Ferguson College in History, Politics, and Sociology. I would say this was the last and best lecture that we had. I also have 3 questions for you. The number 1 question is regarding when we see when at the first time when Taliban was defeated, it ran towards Pakistan. And as you mentioned correctly, that the operation should have started from the east of Afghanistan. But it did not. And you also asked your friend the reason for that. So I wanted to ask you, what was the explanation given to you? The second one is about the Pashtunwali, or the as you said, there is this bachabazi. They don't respect or they don't see women as equal, and they hate music and dance. Like, I just wanted to ask you, why is there not this nationalistic spirit, and why have they not evolved over time? As we see the world around us has evolved, what is the reason behind this medieval mindset? And third one is regarding is there any future for the Northern Alliance 2.0?
Okay, well, you've given me 3 bombs on my head, so I'm gonna segregate them, and I'm gonna tell you good questions. The first question that you talked about was what the reaction of General Eikenberry was. So the tendency for military commanders are that it's always going to be, silence and smile. So he was silent and he smiled. So that is all that you possibly can get from a 4-star army commander. And tell me.
But did they not know that such thing would have happened, or like?
Well, when you ask a very senior commander that did you commit a mistake, they normally will not agree. But he can't say because mistakes have been committed. So it's always going to be silence and smile. That's how it is everywhere. And with respect to the second, the most interesting questions of yours, Afghanistan is not a democracy. Afghanistan evolved as a civilization. Durrani, Lodi, they were the ones who essentially ruled Afghanistan for very long. So they've got a ruler on the top. In the midst of it, even then when there was a ruler, the Uzbeks, the Tajiks, and the Turk, the Kyrgyz, the Pashtuns, they were always divided. So even then when you have a leader up on the top, there always a secondary leader who heads these houses. So I can explain to you as simply as you've got, you've seen the movie Game of Thrones. So you've got 5 houses. So 5 houses are divided in their own interest. In similar way, the 5 houses is Tajik, a leader of Tajik, a leader of Uzbek, a leader of Hazaras, a leader of, and they will never sit with each other and talk. Because if they do, their mindset, their generational ideology is that we are conscious of our own efforts. So you can take you can take the idea of Afghanistan and put it inside a Tajik, but you can never take the Tajik identity outside the heart and mind of a Tajik warlord or a Tajik leader who believes in his identity more than the concept of Afghanistan.
But sir, regarding India, we see we have there is this. I mean, there are issues, but we still, we have still a lot of developed from our even, for example, regarding caste mindset or anything. So why are they not trying to reform? Do they not see any benefit in that?
So it's not about benefit. They don't have that. They don't have a culture. So they don't have a unity. It was never in them. It is never in them for generations. So for generations, for civilizations, they have never been one. Now, one fine day, you tell them that you are one Afghanistan. I mean, so you've never been one for for centuries, and then one fine day the West comes in and says, let us unite. Will you do it? Will we do it? We did it. We did it. We were also divided. Let me tell you. But we had leaders who fought for our independence and said, we are Indians. Let us unite. We had, Chandrasekhar Azad as freedom fighters. We had Subhash Chandra Bose who fought for India. So measures such as these inculcated. 1857 happened because they believed that we need to throw the British away. It will never happen. The Tajiks fought for Tajiks. The Uzbeks fought for the Uzbeks. They never fought for one unity. Even when the Americans went in, they fought against Taliban. They never fought for Afghanistan. They fought against Taliban. So are you getting the connect?
Yes. Yeah. And also regarding the third question about the any future for the Northern Alliance 2.0.
See, Ahmad Masood is a young Ahmad Masood and Amrullah Saleh. So Ahmad Masood is very young. He is dynamic, but then he does not have a combat experience. You cannot pick up a weapon and say, I'm going to go and fight. The Taliban fighters are generational. In 1980, a 12-year-old who started fighting against the Russians, let's say in 1970 at best. So today, he's a 60-year-old man with 50 years of combat experience. In the entire Indian army, we don't have anybody who's got more than 20-30 years of combat experience at best. So this one boy, and imagine how many boys would have been who got 50 years of combat experience. No general in any of the army, whether you talk about British Army or American Army, has more than 20 years of combat experience. Forget about 50 years of combat experience. So it's very difficult to follow against him. So again, it's my assumption that it's going to be very difficult for him to convince. Amrullah Saleh has a reputation, but then Ahmad Masood, he cannot be the father that once his dad was. So Ahmad Masood was a lion. He was known as, he was Lion of Panjshir.
Yeah.
He was Lion of Panjshir because he fought. Ahmad Masood is an MBA. So there is a difference.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Next question. Come on, be quick.
Good evening, sir. I am Riya Sharma and currently I am pursuing my master's in political science. So while reading about the US exit from Afghanistan, I came across a narrative which connected the US exit with the Abraham Accords. Sir, it said that the US withdrawal from Afghanistan exhibits its disinterest in the Middle East, and now the Arab states see Israel as a neighbor with military prowess and great intelligence, causing them no harm, unlike the other powers of the opposite axis, that is Iran and Turkey. So, sir, I just wanted to know your comments on this shift in geopolitical alliance in the Middle East post US exit.
Well, I don't study Middle East in a way that you do. So congratulations. I must have forgotten about Abraham Accords. So you've essentially given me something to read about. But what I don't follow Middle East at all. So I can be as lame as anybody to comment on it, but I can tell you only this much, that there was a US Army War College delegation that came to my organization, a couple of months ago. And when I introduced my opinion on counterinsurgency that we talked about as an area of specialty, the American colonel said, we are not interested in counterinsurgency anymore. So anything that the Americans get beaten to, their expectations are shattered. They simply say that we are not interested. They will not say that we accept the defeat. We are not interested. So the shift in Americans going beyond Middle East as a component could have been because they wanted to implement a certain day. They have Israel doing it for them. They've got relationship with the Saudis. Turkey is again a major player who plays both sides. Turkey played a major role in Afghanistan. Now Turkey is a NATO member. So he's got access to NATO and anybody else. So, but again, does it support Americans' interest? I don't know. It's only Americans who can tell you. But the funny part is the Americans will simply say, even if you ask the Americans, they'll say, we're not interested in Middle East anymore. There's nothing there. They will not say that, we were beaten off in Syria. They'll simply say, we're not interested. So, that is from me.
So there was one more question. So does the US still have a strong intelligence architecture in Afghanistan, given that they have withdrawn from mostly all the strategic bases, and currently I think they lack any strong partnership on ground in the region?
So now that's interesting, because I did a podcast with Dr. Peter Roberts of RUSI today. And it was launched today. It is out there in the media. Go check it out. It talks about China, Iran, Pakistan, India, and Russia's implications in Afghanistan. So what I can tell you is how do you think that the drone simply flew in the Afghanistan's airspace and knocked out Al-Zawahiri when he was sipping a cup of chai in a balcony, looking at birds, looking at sky, and he has a hellfire dropped on top of him? It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in that way. So now Abdur Rahman is the new ambassador of Pakistan to Afghanistan. Now, if you see Abdur Rahman's resume, he was Director General of Europe in the MFA, their Minister of Foreign Affairs. He was Director General of South Asia. And before that, he was Deputy Ambassador or Deputy High Commissioner in US for 4 years. So whenever you make Pakistan's Deputy Ambassadors or High Commissioners role in US, that means this foreign diplomat, or I would rather say foreign affairs officer, his primary responsibility was to ensure that the Americans see Afghanistan through the eyes of Pakistan. Because that's why he's there. So he wants the Americans to see that, look, this is how Afghanistan looks like, a big, shady, all of rocks, all of mountains, only through the eyes of Pakistan. So where do you think that drones flies? And there have been statements released by the foreign minister of Afghanistan saying that there is a high probability, or I think it's surety, that the drone flew from Pakistan. So, that's my answer to you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, next question. Come on. Nusrat, have you any questions?
No, sir. Everything is clear.
Hafsa? So I think Mr. Mishra, I think I would like to talk to you, and all that I can say is that all the major aspects of the issue, the subject, the problem that we have taken up for your address have been very well explained, and the students also have put their queries. And I hope there is much to learn about this. But lastly, I would like to have your opinion on this subject. Have US not learned lesson after so many, bad experiences in such, military interventions, military exercises, and military operations?
Sir, it's a very interesting question, and it's actually funny because when you look into history, the US went into Korea, the US went into Grenada, the US then tried and to do something in Cuba, the Bay of Pigs, if you remember. So then the US thought, we don't like Noriega. Okay, let's not, I don't like Noriega at all. So they went and removed Noriega on top of it. They went into Nicaragua. Then they went into, they thought, okay, so we've got nothing to do. Let's go to Vietnam. Then they tried to be funny with Vietnam. They tried to be funny with Laos. They tried to be funny with Cambodia. The Cambodians and the Laotians, they tried, let's unify again. Let's unify with Vietnam and throw away the Americans. So then they tried to be funny in Malaysia. They tried to be funny in Singapore. They tried to be funny. They've tried to be funny in Iraq. They've tried to be funny in Mogadishu. They've tried to be funny in Somalia. So it's amazing. And then whenever I question them by saying, have you learned a lesson? I mean, isn't it the world so small? Out of 194 nations, you've there in 30, 35, 40 countries. And then they're like, we don't, it has been what it is. So when I ask them, haven't you learned something? I mean, isn't it the world small for you? So it's funny because even then with this such a defeat in Afghanistan, which they pack up their bags and then they ran off, they still have their drones flying, looking through the eyes of Pakistan, giving Pakistan F-16s, telling, in the context of we are doing counterinsurgency operations. It's natural that no counterinsurgency operations needs that kind of kinetic action which F-16 carries. So it is eventually it's eventually going to be used against India. So even knowing that fact, when I asked that good colonel from the US Army War College, he's like, I'm not interested in counterinsurgency anymore. You're not, because you're being battered in this, not only in Vietnam, now in Afghanistan. So they run away. They have a tendency to run away. They don't agree to the fight, they run away. So I don't think so if they have learned their lessons, and I don't think so if they will.
I think the Ukraine crisis has something to do, and they are not very happy with India's stand on that crisis. And they say that what India is doing or saying doesn't support their stand. So maybe just to trick India, and they are giving these arms or this help to Pakistan. So it is another way of twisting, your tail, and not directly but indirectly. And as you said, and I also agree with you that they have not learned the lesson. They have always backed the wrong horse. And the fact is that they are not able to decide about their foreign policy objectives. They are not, they are very flimsy, they are very shaky. And so this Asia pivot is concerned, sometimes they say that we are here, we are. Then again, Barack Obama say that we are more interested in Middle East and all that. So I don't know, if such a big power has been so shaky here, not been very clear about its foreign policy objectives. They don't know where their interests lie. Sometimes they go to NATO, sometimes they come to East Asia, and they talk of Taiwan and all that. They are just like a police inspector.
Absolutely.
Anywhere in the world, they say that there is some crime or some offense, and like a police inspector, we will the first to reach there. and what they will do later on, it is for the whole world to see. I mean, it's such a, powerful nation. I don't know what goes behind their thinking and all that. So all that we can say is, let's pray that sanity prevails there, and it is in the interest of the world peace, and issues are not aggravated, and not all the time you should look for conflict. You should look for cooperation and world prosperity. And I think it could be only through international organizations, conciliation, negotiations, diplomacy. Military solution is not, it should be the last, weapon. If the diplomacy doesn't solve it, then the war is the only alternative. And this is what we have seen in 71. When Mrs. Gandhi saw that ultimately it is going to be a military action, and she prepared for it. And then she went to Russia for a pact, peace pact and all that. She had made all the preparations on the advice of General Manik Shah. He said that please wait for a few months till the rainy season is over. And in the meantime, you should prepare for final assault if the things don't improve. Then we can march to the East Pakistan side. So this is, wise strategy on the part of the military leaders as well as the political leaders in India. And that has paid the dividend. And that's why we are so assertive now. And we have been very clear and very forthright in our, diplomatic initiatives and all that. So what the plague we are facing today from the Western side or the Europeans, it has been very well, replied to by our foreign minister. Absolutely. They say that don't look at the world from your own prism or your own eyes. There are other side also. Absolutely. So with that, I would like to thank you for such an exhaustive, very comprehensive, very detailed, account of this, and that has helped us to understand what went wrong in Afghanistan on the part of the US. And sooner they realized it, I think it was better for them. So thank you very much. And we hope to have your support and cooperation in future also. Thank you very much.
Anytime, sir. Thank you for hosting me, sir. Thank you so much.
And with your permission, I would like to now close the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.